And I actually invited some of my team here. So you'll see Amy, Colin, and Lauren joining in too. But a little bit of background, we're fairly, I would say, new to the organization, certain processes, and we're just now embarking on building out quarterly planning sessions. So we actually haven't had our first one. We
Yay.
just scrums. Yeah. We just started a scrum of scrums. I definitely see like a longer term vision for what we want to accomplish. Not there yet. And really excited to hear what else is doing it.
Cool. Hello.
Hi, my name is Shubha. I'm not ready to turn on my video. So my name is Shubha. I'm a program manager at Ring Central. I manage the product releases at Ring Central, and we have the quarterly planning process in place. But though we start the quarterly planning, so it changes so often within the quarter. So I want to know how other organizations are handling when the priorities change within a quarter. So I'm curious to hear about the updates from you, Becky and Pamela. Thanks for arranging this session.
All right, nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Again?
Yes, Becky. Thank you.
All right, we have quite a few people joining us still, so let's give them a couple minutes. So maybe in 6-7 minutes, in a couple more minutes, we can get started. Does it sound good? Sounds good.
Anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Hello. Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm based in Seattle and I work for Discovery Inc., but ultimately the parent company of TLC, HGTV, etc. But I'm on the product side. I'm in a director of product operations role for our Food Network Kitchen app. So I partner with our director of program management on the engineering side to run our quarterly planning process. And we've tried a couple different things and haven't quite nailed it. So excited to learn some best practices.
Yeah, I can
All right.
Hi.
Welcome.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's always kind of hard to not talk over each other on Zoom, but it's great to meet all of you. And thank you, Becky and Pamela, for hosting. My name is Lisa. I'm currently based in San Francisco, working for a company called Planet, and I'm both product and program management lead. So for us, I currently straddle both teams.
Nice meeting you, Lisa.
I could go next. I'm Jessica. I'm based in San Francisco. I work for Clio. I am a program manager, but straddling on customer services, product, and engineering.
Oh, you got your hands full. Welcome.
Hey, good morning. This is Richard. I'm an ex-PayPal, eBay, Visa colleague. Hi, Becky.
Hi.
Thanks, Becky and Pamela, for this amazing forum. Currently, I am working with a 20-people startup. You can tell I do it all: product, engineering, program, go-to-market, strategy, planning, road mapping, all of that. So it's an interesting experience for me to do that. Interestingly, one of the co-founder is from an ex-eBay partner. And this is focused on an interesting problem that we're trying to solve, which is software-defined power management for data centers. So there's quite a bit of exciting work that's being done.
Cool. Welcome. Well, if we don't get to go through everyone, I think what we will do is probably, if you like, put your name and what you're interested in the chat today, in the chat, so that we can dynamically go through that as well. I just want to kick this a start, and then I will introduce myself. I introduce Pam, and then we can just make a conversation with that. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen so that I also want to highlight that we're recording this session because a lot of folks cannot join us. So we record the session primarily for the benefit of them, and also we can look back on this as well. If there's anything you're not comfortable sharing, we can cut it out. Just let us know. We can cut out that part before we send it out. Okay, with that said, let's do a quick intro. I'm Becky Flint, the founder and CEO of Dragonboat, a more modern and PPM tool to plan, prioritize, and communicate your portfolios and roadmaps, often in the context of rolling or quarterly planning. Before Dragonboat, I was one of the first program managers at PayPal, led international expansion and credit. I ran quarterly planning and built the first portfolio management at PayPal 15 years ago. And later, I built program management and product ops at Shutterfly, BigCommerce, and a couple of startup companies. And I realized that great portfolio program management is the foundation of building great product and, frankly, great company. But the craft and the profession is not very well recognized. So this led me to start Dragonboat, as well as the Program Manager Facebook group. And I think this is a forum we can support each other, learn from each other, and become a vibrant community to take the best practice to the rest of the world, so to speak. And this will be one of many we had in our chats, as well as many we will have. And I met Pam on the Facebook group, Program Managers, and I'm very excited to hand this over to her.
Yeah, so thank you. So I'm Pamela. I lead the TPM. I'm one of the TPM leaders at LinkedIn, leading the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions org. So this is like this coffee chat basically spun out from an idea to for us to have a forum to casually chat about common topics like quarterly planning, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So we'd love to learn about your learnings. There's definitely struggles where I am around quarterly planning and how we define that, and love to share learning stories, some of the tips of tricks that we realized as well as we go along.
Cool. I started this with a poll. Can you guys see the poll on my screen? No, I can't see it.
We don't see.
Okay, so I will just read it out. So in here we have mostly program managers, 24%, and then we have a small number, 14% of the 24 program managers, 86% of them. And then we have a 14% of product management. Based on some of the intro, I know some of you actually straddle both. So if we, basically it seems to me, and we can talk a little bit more later down in our chat, is that program managers are quite often getting involved in this, but definitely product managers are partner to it or co-lead on that. So it's great that we have that coverage. In today's topic, primarily, there are the top three topics are how to integrate quarterly planning with the rest of the process that we have today. And the second one to it, so that's a 50% of you want to know that. The second top interest is how to resource planning. So that's about 20% of you. And then there is a couple of other topics like how to prioritize, and then how to convince quarterly planning and to others to do that. And then there was a couple of interesting questions, say, what is the quarterly planning anyway? So I think that's a pretty good coverage on a bunch of topics. So I want to just highlight a little bit of the format we will have today. So it's not going to be a presentation. And so Pam and I will be kind of co-host topics, so that our job is to drive the conversation going, and also add if questions that either one of us can answer, we're happy to share some of our perspectives. But it will primarily be an interactive session from all of you, and I hope that's okay. Okay, so with that said, these are a couple of topics. one of the interesting thing is, I just want to put it out. Pam and I kind of discussed about this, right? So a lot of times in an organization, quarterly planning is not easy to implement for various reasons. And we get definitely mentality from various part of the organization, for example, engineering, say, hey, we're agile. What do we need to for quarterly planning? So we just want to put it out there. And if it's something that come up often and how we discuss through the threads, we, at least from my experience has been, there's quite a bit of convincing to do to the organization why we need to do quarterly planning, since we are already agile with autonomous teams. So with that said, it kind of goes through what does it mean to you? How does your company run it? And tips, tricks, and stories. Now, keep in mind, the reason we record this is also we're going to fill up these informations into slides. So we'll share that with you along the way. So, want to say something, Pam, or anyone want to chime in?
Nope, I think you got it pretty much. We want to center around these three topics over the next 45 minutes. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to facilitate each topic at a time. And we're going to fill up the deck after the session and send it out to you guys so you have the material on hand as you go from this coffee chat. All right, let's get started, Becky. You're going to go to the first.
All right. You lead this, Pam?
Yeah, sure. So the first topic is what is quarterly planning means to you, the benefit and the challenges. So I'll kind of put my perspective in and we'll open up the floor for any comments, anything that you guys may be thinking a bit differently. So quarterly planning to me is that there is definitely multiple levels of planning in an organization, right? So there is the yearly planning in some organizations that we have an outlook of what the year might be. It also includes, for your financial outlook that's tied to that. And then one layer below that is the quarterly planning. And to me, quarterly planning means that that's the forum where you balance your resources. You confirm your commitment for the next 3 months across your organization. You make sure that the direction did not change in the next 3 months. And then that would feed into the team sprint planning, where the execution actually really happens. So this is where to me, quarterly planning basically is to balance out both trade-offs, dependencies, but also resourcing within your area. That's what it means to me. Now, in terms of the benefits, I feel it's important to look at every 3 months to see where your roadmap is going. That also aligns with the financial or the fiscal kind of quarters. The challenges is that sometimes it can get a little, what people say, heavy, right? Because once you finish planning, you're basically going to be planning for the next quarter. So it seems like an endless kind of cycle. So that I feel is the biggest challenge that I'm facing right now, is like, it feels too heavy. How do we make it lighter, right? I'm just coding per se. So that's something that I would love to hear from you guys, if you guys have any thoughts as well. So I'll open it up. Anyone wants to add on?
Yes. Hi, Chuba here. Yes, Pamela, you covered everything well. I think what we in our organization also quarterly planning means aligning on the business goals and ensuring all the product teams are aligned. The features are aligned to the business goals we set in that quarter. And making sure that every product line, so like if one team is planned for a feature, and the other team also has to plan for the same feature so that they align. So it should not be coming in the next quarter. So we align on the dependencies that way. So quarterly planning that way is helping, but the challenges we are facing is sometimes the direction of the organization changes in between the quarter. So some of the priorities for a product changes, and then how it cascades to different teams and how they have to align. So it is a challenge. So we have to see how to it becomes over communication. So we would have set the plan in the beginning of the quarter, and something changes, and then how to communicate it to the various teams, and then make sure everybody is aligned back, and so that we have the product holistically released from various teams is a challenge for us.
Does anyone want to add?
Anybody has any thoughts around how to address that? Like anybody have like done it successfully, or like have any tips around that?
Can I jump in? This is Richard. Becky, you might have experienced the same thing with PayPal. So I'm going to kind of weave a thought process here. To me, it is 3 different themes. One is a bi-weekly or every 2-week sprint cycle to start with. That's from the ground up. And the second thing I would look at is a quarterly program exercise. So if you look at sprint, it is sprint planning to demo, and then the days in between are execution. Same way, if I look at a program level, the next up is going to be on a monthly level. But again, I will start with the program planning and a program review. If I go one layer up, it's a quarterly level planning to review. So when Subhashini talked about the challenges after the fact that the quarterly planning is done, and then during the months, the 3 months, there are opportunities where one of the work streams changes priorities, and that actually ends up throwing another team off the roadmap, either for capacity or for scope or priority. So that's why if I go back to the second layer, which is the monthly program level review, my agenda would be to cover not only my programs, but also all the cross-functional dependency programs and exit criteria, milestones, prioritization. It allows every 2 sprint sync up as a program level review. And that opens up opportunity for us to pivot and adjust ourselves to whatever that we had already set for the 3 months. And again, one additional thing that I want to add is our quarterly planning is going to have a keyword called rolling quarterly planning, which makes life a lot more easier for us to continue to iterate. Just like we would do sprint, we would also do our monthly program. Very similar to that, we would also do a quarterly planning review. And I'll pause right here if I want to share any additional clarification based on some questions that might come up. Sorry, I'm picturing this in my head and trying to draw this, in my words. I'll be more than happy to share a document that I put together.
Nice. Anyone want to chime in?
Can I ask a question? So with rolling quarterly planning, is there feedback that people feel like they're always in planning then?
That's a good question. So it is a challenge with time, especially with COVID. It's different, but even prior to COVID, we had roughly around 16 different teams internally within our organization, comprised of product, engineering, data, some ML folks. And outside of that, there are other teams that we bring in. So yes, it is a challenge, short answer. The structure is the quarterly planning is usually 1 full day, beginning of quarter and end of quarter. The monthly program review is almost 6 hours. Anyway, minimum 4 hours, probably close to 6 hours per month, which we will cover all programs and the sprint planning and retro. Not only do we do within the teams, but we also kind of elevate it up to all the 14 plus 15 teams, whatever that teams would come up as well, and allows all other cross-functional folks to listen in and then being able to add exec inputs. So given all of this cadence, yes, time is of essence. It does put people in a situation where they need to commit to time. The reason why I encourage committing to the amount of time that people need to give is 1, awareness. Number 2, being able to, with the awareness, being able to manage dependencies, and at the same time being able to manage prioritization and commit to it.
Yeah, I kind of, so Richard's basically sharing very similar, basically a PayPal version of a quarterly planning. And I want to give some context on that as well. Like it or not, I probably the person raised my hand and say, hey, I started the whole thing at PayPal 16 years ago, where we actually moved from annual, like 1 year, 3 year planning process to, 3 year, 1 year still happened at the executive level. And then 1 year to quarter happened at a director level of product engineering plus the program management, which doesn't need to be at a director level. But the idea is that you have to tie your longer term vision and goals into initiative that's shippable in a way that's it's not too static. And for us to do that, you can't just go vision goals into stories, right? So there has to be middle level, and then all of us become the middle level people to break things down to the middle level so we can actually manage it to the scrums. So what we initially did was to like a 4-quarter meeting and then deal with it afterwards. And then we realized that there are a lot of problems in that because quarter is too long. Quarter is too long that things will change. And instead of change at a team level cause a lot of churn, we decided to do a rolling, which turned out to actually work really well in the context of Agile. Think about it. When you have sprints, right? And then you will have a 2-week sprints, you have, daily stand-up, and you have check-ins along the way. So you can think about quarterly planning like that, right? So you have like a quarterly, but you have a sort of the equivalent of daily stand-up. That's your bi-weekly check-in or monthly check-in. Now, depending on the size of the company, depending on the level of complexity, you could get it. Like in the case Richard shared earlier, everyone in the room, a lot of people spend 6 hours, or you have a way to organize such so that you just do bi-weekly check-in, depend on the size and complexity. So that because change is inevitable, things gonna change. So the way we will adjust to that is to have this quarterly cadence, just like a 2-week sprint. And then we have the bi-weekly or weekly cadence, just like a daily stand-up. And not everyone need to be part of it. You don't go through the same level of the involvement, the complexity, but at the same time, still checking so that if we need to make adjustment, we pull in the impacted folks to do that at a level of adjustment. So that's kind of like, you can, if you call it scale, agile or whatnot, that's basically the context of how we take sort of the annual to quarter to, sorry, can you guys see my slide?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so basically you take it from annual to quarter, which is your executive level of agile, if you will, right? And then you take it the quarter to month, which is like a middle level, directors and program management, etc. And your team is the month to week and to days. So these are basically how the whole organization, like gears, moving at a different speed, but we can moving towards the same direction.
Yeah, I think adding one thing, I love the fact how you have laid it out, Becky, and thank you, Richard, for explaining that kind of overview context. I think that really helped to frame it visually. One aspect we have found with our team too is with quarterly planning, both the resource commitment is important as well as, at least for us, we look heavily at the risk management aspect of program. So that's really trying to identify any known unknowns as well as areas of potential unknown unknowns, right? So for example, dependencies, I think that's a big one that we all have to deal with, and it's a constant moving target, but I think that's where a lot of the quote unquote blind spots or known unknowns can come up, whether that be engineering delays or dependency or priority changes or even infrastructure kind of I think implications. And those areas, it's good to at least highlight them. And for us, we have a risk process running within program management to keep an eye on that, dealing with leads, dealing with directors, dealing with software managers. And then I think the unknown unknowns is always where that can throw the entire quarterly cadence or deliverables completely out the window. And the reason why we have those weekly syncs, which I think to your point in the agile aspect is really important, is to try to have that early flag or early risk identification whenever unknowns do pop up. And yeah, one of our mantra is, don't surprise people. Try to give them heads up where possible. So the moment we hear unknowns, that's where we're like, all right, it sounds like an escalation. Relevant stakeholders, they need to be notified, and then we can talk about how we go from there.
That's cool. So any context, I saw someone was, I think it was Kevin asking a question on how do we align opportunities to high-level OKRs, but then there are opportunities for cross different teams. Everyone has their own goals. So I want to pause here for a second, because yesterday, and Pam and I actually talk about exactly the same challenges, which is the cross-team dependencies and alignment of OKRs. Pam, you want to kind of bring it up and share a little bit of your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think there is always a challenge around like how do you manage and balance the dependencies that you have within quarterly planning, but also on an ongoing basis. So I think that's something that we discuss a little bit more around, like how do we, things might change during the quarter as well, like you guys mentioned. What is the change management kind of mechanism that we have to put in place? So I think, and also realizing that we do have to make sure that we trade off. How do we also see that, from a product area goals and product priorities, that all of this map, and how do we make sure that we have full commitment throughout? So I think that's something that we kind of discussed a little bit around, like what are probably some of the strategies. I don't know, Becky, if you want to share on some of them.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that you mentioned it earlier about how this is actually happens a lot. Okay, so a couple of things. One is, in many ways, we program managers or product managers or product operations, we kind of in the middle, right? Connect to both the executives and the leadership team, as well as the team. Quite often we work with the team very closely. We try to, help them organize and plan things. We don't, when also we hold our team accountable, right? So you have a points and velocities and all that stuff and make sure that team delivers. We don't really hold our leaders accountable sometimes because we're not really either, culturally or not, maybe not given the power or data and the visibility, right? So what I'm trying to say is that what the team should be working on across team dependencies, it's something that really should align to the higher level objectives and OKRs. If when the company build objectives and OKRs very silo, they will say product team, whatever VPs and directors have these goals, and each one of them have different goals. You basically create this challenge of team A will not really be motivated or incentivized to support team B because it's not aligned to my goals, right? Everyone try to support my goal, which is what we're supposed to do. So you do have to have a company level ideas on, one is, what is the goal for the company? And then we have a shared goal. So these initiatives could support these shared goals. And in that way, your prioritization become easier. You're not gonna be a exercise of, hey, I have to go to Pam and say, hey, please, we're friends. Can we do this? We're almost done. Last month I did this. Because that's not a way to run a company, that would drive the result we want, right? We really want it to be say, hey, these are higher level goals. And as a company, we want to allocate, 20%, 30%, 50%, whatever, to these areas. And then we can align to that and make sure that we fit into the 30%, 40%, whatever allocation. So one of the things I did at PayPal is I built this portfolio management process. I don't know, Richard, you guys still do that today. It's been a while. But the portfolio management process was to decide on, at the company level, what kind of allocation towards the goals would apply. And that would go to different teams. So when the program managers need to negotiate or coordinate, arrange dependencies, you can actually have to say, hey, we have a planning. This is our allocation to your team. Let's find the best way to work through that. If that doesn't meet the needs, then we can escalate to make a decision at a higher level, because that's where things need to be adjusted at a different level. So that's sort of the framework that we, in general, propose, meaning One is to have a high level understanding of the goals that should apply to all. And we have a shared goals as well. And then we have some level of allocation of the goals so that it's a framework for us to do the more detailed level planning and dependencies without sort of having to using personal connections and begging to get things done. So I'm gonna pause here. I wanna hear some of the questions and comments from the team, from the group here already.
So I think in addition to that, actually to what Becky said, like the communication part is extremely critical around like what those goals are and making sure that the organizations across are bought into that as well. Because we do see a challenge when you do not do that there's a breakdown in information and there's going to be chaos during the quarterly planning or even team level planning, right? So I think just very, very clear, like published out OKRs, I mean, not OKRs, but goals from a company perspective, but from a sub-org perspective. So depending on how big your organization is.
Right. So anyone else having a question, comments?
I would like to add again. So yeah, we do the quarterly planning and also the bi-weekly check-in. And the challenge we have is that managing various geographical location. So Becky, I would like to hear from you or anyone else on how you are managing multi regions or multi locations planning, because we have Russia and Shaman, so there are 3 different time zones. So I would like to hear stories of how you're managing sharing these the plans and also the check-ins across locations. And is it overwhelming, because if you have to hear 3 times for every quarter for every meeting, so it's going to be hard. So I would like to know more how others are managing.
I'm happy to share some of the experience that we have. So at PayPal, I led international expansion, and later on, all the companies I worked are internationally distributed. So we definitely run into situations where we have time zone conflicts where Europe and Asia or Australia and the US just don't have the same time, any time. So we initially, and back in long time ago, we had to do 2 meetings, which, obviously it's not sustainable in the world. So then we had to come up with a couple of things. One is that we create a way to do asynchronous communication, which means that we have a source of truth. The source of truth will show all this collaboration. So basically, you keep what's your OKRs, what's your goals, what's your initiatives, and where the progress are, issues and risks, etc. So you have a source of truth that becomes something that people refer to. So that would reduce the need for reduce the frequency of the real-time communication. So not necessarily we will do it on a bi-weekly basis. Potentially we can do it on a monthly basis. So then we switch time zone. For example, we would do a morning session that's Europe and US, somewhat US friendly, and not necessarily Asia friendly. And then we switch to an Asia friendly time in the next session. So we kind of like, someone would take the brunt of the time, but having a source of truth system and then alternate so that the system will reduce the need and give people context and alternate the time zone is something that we produce. So one of the, our customer at Dragonbow, they have teams in 9 countries operating. So this is how they go about doing this, is instead of having more frequent weekly check-ins, because their roadmap changes very frequent as a startup company. They have now, it's like bi-weekly check-in, alternate the time, and then they would have a source of truth, so then you can basically use that as the way to asynchronize the check-in, see what's going on, and that's where helps. It won't not go away, the problem, but it can be mitigated in some ways. Would love to hear what you guys' experience and approach for this.
I can add something here. This is Ashley. One of the things that I feel is really important when you have a lot of cross time zone collaboration that you need to do is plan the meetings up front with as much notice as possible, and to really mitigate those last minute meetings, because we're working across like 5 different countries in my company, and that's the number one thing, is really setting expectations that some meetings are going to be just terrible for some people, but you're also going to like switch that, and so that other people will have to take the brunt of that at another time. But giving that heads up, I think is really important.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is Rich. On those 3 phases that I talked about, I had published a calendar for the entire year, so to say, unless or otherwise there are some all hands or something that comes up that we need to change things around. So that's one thing. And the second thing is time boxing for each program, for each of the tracks, each of the teams, so to say, would also really help. And the third thing I did is asynchronous documentation collaboration prior to coming into those planning or retro exercises, either for monthly or for quarterly or for sprint exercises. And having those documentation, have people pre-read it, allows focused, outcome-driven exercise during the meeting. And the fourth thing is having it recorded. Also helps people if unfortunately they couldn't make it, they can circle back and connect back with the product and engineering leads.
Yeah, I plus one to the pre-reads. I think what I've seen successful is actually having pre-reads of the plan and focusing the time that you have, the limited time, towards just discussions and questions. What I've also seen successful is post that, if you're in a bigger organization, having some sort of a town hall or AMA for people to ask questions as well. So there's like multi-tiers of communication.
It's a very good tip. Anyone else want to share?
Becky, I have a question going back to your like source of truth comment. Do you have some examples of like programs that you found like a lot of success with, or how, like what would be an example of a source of truth that has worked well for you?
Interestingly, you asked me the source of truth of the portfolio. The reality is there's not a good system. And that's the motivation for me to start the Dragon Boat. Dragon Boat is actually purpose-built as a portfolio and a roadmap tool that covers 4 elements of source of truth, or 4 elements of the product roadmaps, if you will. So number one is connecting OKRs with product features. Not only just OKR product features, also connect associated resources and dependencies from multiple teams so that we can allocate correctly using the resources towards the OKRs. The second part of the source of truth is about engineering side of things. So the system we use, such as Dragon Ball or others, would have to connect to Jira or engineering tools so that what engineering will be working on is associated to the higher level quarterly planning output. The third part of the source of truth, which is overlooked by all other tools because they are not really program management tool, that is the progress and the status and the health of your portfolio and program roadmaps. What that means is not only we can see the scrums, the burn downs, the typical agile process inside of Jira, for example, we also need to see at entire quarterly roadmap level what our progresses are by different perspectives, by teams, by objectives, by customer segments, and how we're meeting our customer commitment. The fourth part of that is the health dashboard and change management. The health dashboard, we know, right? We always have to communicate our roadmaps to say, is it red, yellow, green? Are we on track? Are we behind? That is, again, not an easy way to get that kind of information until you connect program management elements together with agile execution, together with OKR. Change management is another part where we know the minute the quarterly planning is done, it is outdated because things don't always happen on time. And roadmap changes. It is natural that we have to change our product features as the business changes. And how we perform what if analysis. How do we understand the resource implications? And that, again, is a program portfolio management skill. So there needs to be a tool where existing tool doesn't really support it. So as a result, I started Dragonboat, and that is built as a source of truth for connecting OKRs and the product features and dependencies and the resources and the progresses and the risk mitigations, as well as reporting to various stakeholders in one place. Without the tool, mostly we resort to spreadsheets, confluences, emails, and meetings.
Thanks, Becky. I would like to add for the source of truth, what we are managing at Ring Central. So we use AHA. So this is addresses the feature-based dependencies. So where each team would have done the resource allocate capacity management and committed to the feature. So that goes to AHA for a release, which other teams refer to and see if anything gets moved. So they will get to know, okay, they have to reprioritize. So AHA is the source of truth for us for feature related. But again, the challenge is that so it doesn't address any HA or any other infrastructure related large initiatives. So that has to be again managed outside of it, and that doesn't get accounted there. So.
Right. So
we use AHA. Oh, sorry. We use AHA as well. We actually have AHA to Jira integration because AHA lets the customers, you can show the features to the customers. There's some kind of customer voting. You can take an idea and make it a feature in AHA, but engineers are used to Jira. So we integrate AHA and Jira together. And for the engineering driven features, they are required to create it in AHA because even engineering or infrastructure changes need product management involvement for the communication and the documentation. Yeah. So we have it's one source of truth, but two different views because they're integrated. Yeah.
Right. Right. Typically you would have a engineering tool quite often, Jira, and then you have another tool where you use it to plan product features and or engineering features so that you can resource and prioritize there before it goes to Jira so that Jira is less busy. And then you also create a high level view for stakeholders not necessarily getting to the details. All right, we have about 14 minutes left. We talk a little bit of sort of the what it means to you, the benefit and challenges. The second part of that is how does your we kind of jump through a couple of things already. So just, we can still sort of going through our topics. One of the question is topics people ask, and especially now we have some of you are relatively new to this space. So how does your company or team run quarterly planning? For, some are bigger companies, or you run it globally for your whole company that's more than 5,000 people. Or, if anyone interested to hear are like relatively small company and or not necessarily small company, but smaller engineering size and, a couple hundred engineers or fewer. Anyone interested to share about how you design it and how do you tune it to run for your area? Or if you have a wish list, what would you want it to be run? Let's say that. If you have a wish list, say, hey, whatever we run it, it's not great. I want to change it to XYZ.
I could start. So I work at a relatively smaller company with less than 20 engineers. So when I came in, the hardest part was setting up the process because everybody was a mixed bunch. There are some people who are just straight out of college, other people who are larger companies, and no one knew exactly what to do. So I took on the role where I had to take the big company process and try to train everybody. It's been a huge learning curve because I literally had to start from like the very bare bone basics. What is an OKR? How do we actually break it down from the executive level to the VPs, to the directors, and then down to the management level, and then working with each of the engineering team and training them how to do Scrum. That was the hardest part, only because everybody had such a different learning curve on it. But the way I ran it was just like bare bone basics. This is what we should start doing. Practice that for a quarter and then start building on top of it. That helped a lot because everybody understood what the common ground was. And then as we were building, like, hey, within any issues within the Scrum team, notify me ASAP. I report that up. And then that way, when I do the cross-dependency planning, I have time to notify each team. But within that planning process, I make sure that I have buffer room and then some actually backlog items that we can pull in if we actually complete initiatives on time or before time.
That's awesome, Jessica. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to say that like Jessica, I was the first hire, the first product manager at my current company. So I had to start this process from zero. It's been, as she was saying, a learning curve, and I had to change it several times. What we're doing now, what we were doing initially is I was having this meeting with the tech leads, and we were deciding what were the main initiatives that we wanted to work on. I started to hear, and these meetings are usually pretty long, and I started to hear from the engineers that they didn't particularly want it to be included in these meetings because it was distracting them from their work. And because we're a very small company, I thought it would be valuable to have them. But what I've decided then to do is that right now we're only having the meetings or these quarterly meetings with the kind of leadership team, which is for people. Then I currently bring the focus of what we should be doing, but not really detailed stuff. Only, we have, let's say this quarter, we should be focusing on these two things, let's say visual experiences and something else. So a bit broad, but to give a focus to the quarter. And then after the focus has been decided, this is where we go and meet with the engineers to set up what their objectives and key results are going to be. And this is where they're usually a little bit more involved, because then this is where we start discussing the how. And, I've seen they're a lot more involved in these meetings rather than in the meetings where we're deciding the main focus of the quarter.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Sarah. And I'm not sure you saw the earlier slide we had earlier, which is at the engineering team level, the goal is to pass them enough context so that they can focus, but not too big ambiguity. So then having the quarterly planning, or the word of quarterly planning is misleading, right? Because it's not really quarterly happen event. It's more of a rolling quarterly horizon. We need to look out that far. And then, the product managers, the program managers are the ones to narrow down all the fuzzy and the noises to that level. So then it gave engineering team the context for them to focus. So that's a great learning. And it's awesome.
Yeah, so I can also share what we do at LinkedIn, but also I was at Fitbit before, which was significantly different, like how we actually plan, as well as PayPal as well. So at LinkedIn, every sub-org, so I would say like every line of business plans a little bit differently. But within our org itself, we do like quarterly planning. It takes us about a month in general to plan end to end. And we're an organization of like 500 people, at least for the LOB. And then once you finish planning, we have an executive review at the end of the planning. So basically how it goes is like you do a kickoff email, tell folks here are the major milestones, and then the team's plan that gets rolled up into an executive review for that LOB. And then once LOB review that also feeds into what we call a quarterly business review, and that's with the CEO and all the executive. We do a look back, we do a look forward plan, we do a section on learnings, but also our financials at the QBR. Within the LOB, we also review kind of learnings. I think being able to reflect what we learned from the last quarter has been extremely useful for other people to hear as well. So that's at LinkedIn. At Fitbit, it was slightly, I would say, like significantly different, just also because of the size of the company. A lot is very much like we pair up with the tech lead. So in a planning session, we have product, tech lead, an engineering manager, and then the TPM, of course. We figure out what the plan is for the quarter for the teams, and then we go up to the portfolio managers, and there is a huge release planning that actually happened, which is, when I say release planning, it's really to the true sense of like agile release planning, where everybody's, and well, at that time when I was there, everybody was in a room actually with boards and shifting things around. So we did that at Fitbit. It was also experimental. When I left, they were still doing that. It was quite interesting because we were able to see all the investments, but we'll also be able to see kind of like where the gaps are, to meet our kind of like financial goal, right? So that helped a lot. But at that level, when we did release planning, it was really with the executives, but also like the VPs and director level. So everything would have already bubbled up. And then at PayPal, it was somewhat similar, where we did very much with the tech lead product set direction. We did with tech lead, we validated, and it was more of a rolling. And we also had a top 10 kind of list from the organization of like, these are the top 10 priority for the company. So we fund those first, and then we also fund kind of a roadmap. So we split our roadmap to kind of like 70-30 or 50-50 to achieve those goals. So that's three different views of three different kind of how three different companies kind of run their planning.
That's very cool. Thank you. I think we're running a little bit out of time today. It's really, really cool to hear many of you having a lot of good inputs, as well as some of the challenges. And, you know, Pam and I would love to host additional follow-up discussions. And I would love to hear from you anything you may want to double click on, the change of the forums, or anything else that could be interesting. So, so Pam is going to send up a follow-up survey, and if you can fill up and you know, then it will be, you know, it's a survey, but you can always add additional information. By the way, we also have our contact information here as well. So if you would love to just directly email us or go to our LinkedIn and connect with us, I think you know, I think I'm probably connected to many of you. If not, just go ahead. Find us. You know, this is a great community. You know, I've been in program management for good 20 years, and I see this profession evolve, including product ops as well. I want to say product ops because a lot of times program manager is not just working with engineering, with the product and the cross-functional team as well. And what our role has becoming is like from a traditional project management to Scrum, now to more strategic program and portfolio management. And I think, you know, being together and grow our career professionally together, since there are not many of us in each individual company, is a big passion of mine and many of yours as well. So please do share your thoughts, questions, and other topics, so we can have further discussions.
So yes, I think somebody asked if the recording will be shared. We will share the recording. We'll also add some points from the discussion we had to the slides, so you guys have that. But do take the survey. I've put the survey link in the chat. We'll also send it out as part of email to you guys. But it's been a very interesting conversation. I think just hearing from various folks, that we definitely have a lot of challenges. I think in general with quarterly planning, would love to kind of hear and discuss more about it as well.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Marla.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for